Adonai ma'adam v'teda'ehu men enosh v'techashvehu Adam lahevel dama yamav kitzelo בבוקר יציץ וחלב, לערב ימולל ויבש, תשב אנוש עד דקה, ותאמר שוב
In the words of Ecclesiastes, a season is set for everything, a time for every experience under heaven, a time for dancing and a time for wailing, a time for birthing and a time for dying, a time for speaking and a time for silence, a time for seeking and a time for losing. The time of mourning is a complicated time filled with many emotions, both bitter and sweet. Our service contains recitation of psalms and prayers, linking David's life with the 3,000-year-old tradition of the people of Israel and the eternity of God. I don't think there's a better way to start honoring David than through song. So Deb, thank you so much for bringing us with words of song. I also don't think there's a better way to begin than by explaining my connection to David, because it sounds like every single person on this earth has a connection to David. I never met David, but I worked at Minnesota Hillel. I work at Herzl Camp. I'm going to be working at Beth Jacob Synagogue. My grandparents are from Minneapolis. Those are just a few, very, very few connections that David and I have. And Deb and I are convinced at some point on the family tree we are cousins, which I'm sure many, many people in this room are as well. Mizmor LeDavid, mi yagur b'cholecha, mi yishkon b'char kodshecha. Do we deserve to enter God's sanctuary? Can we merit a place in the presence of God? Live with integrity, do what is right, speak the truth without deceit, have no slander upon your tongue, and do no evil to others. Do not mistreat your neighbor, spurn a contemptible person, but honor those who revere God. Never retract a promise once made, though it may bring you harm. Lend no money at unfair rates, accept no bribe against the innocent. Make the deeds your own, they shall stand you firm forever. And how firm did David stand? In Psalm 23 we read, Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai roi lo echsar, Bino desha yar b'tzeini, Amei menuchot gan chaleni. Nafshi yoshvei v'yancheni b'malei tzedek l'ma'an shemo. Gam ki elech b'gei tzamavet, lo irara ki ata yimadi. Shivtecha u'mishantecha chema yan chamuni. Taroch lefanai shulchan neged surai. Ishanta v'shem roshi kos revaya. Achtov v'chesed yudafuni kol yemei chayai. V'shavti b'beit Adonai le'orech yamim. God is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures, leads me beside the still waters. God restores my soul. God guides me in straight paths for God's name's sake. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil, my cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. I just want to note, I'm sure David would have said, thank God Deb's saying instead of me at the beginning. Based off on that side. When I die, give let of me away to children and old men who wait to die. And if you need to cry, cry for your brother walking the street beside you. When you need me, put your arms around anyone and give to them what you need to give to me. I want to give you something better than words or sounds. Look for me in the people I've known or loved. If you cannot give me away, at least let me live in your eyes and not on your mind. You can love me most by letting hands touch hands, by letting bodies touch bodies, by letting go of children that need to be free. Love does not die, people do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away. This week's Parsha, Parshat Shlach, we read of the infamous story of the spies. The story where Moses sends 12 spies to scout the land of Israel, and 10 come back with a negative report. The final verse, in Numbers 13, tells of Moses continuing his instructions, saying, Uma ha'aretz hashmena hi im raza hayesh ba'etz im ein v'hit hazektem u'kachtem mipri ha'aretz hayamim yemei bikur anavim. Yes, is the soil rich or poor? Is it wooded or not? Bring back some of the fruit of the land. And the Torah continues, it happened to be the season of the first ripe grapes. Today it happens, the day the man of grapes will be laid to rest. Upon the spies returning, they report the land is filled with men of great size. In Hebrew, they are called Anshe Midot. Today, this man, this Ish Midah, this great man, is laid to rest. If you noticed, this corner was laughing a little bit about the grapes. The grapes are David's thing. And when I was like, what am I going to talk about with the spies? How can I make this something good? And the Torah literally said grapes. I thought to myself, this could not be more perfect. Grapes were a family joke. I will not take the whole story away, but it culminates with giving grape tributes, grape dish towels, vines of grapes from people's pockets under a chuppah. David was the man of grapes and a great, great man. David Gordon lived many lives and was many things. He was a son, a brother, a husband, a father, a grandfather, a cousin, an uncle, a football fan, a teacher, a friend, a chazan, a jokester, a social network, and so much more. He was never shy to find a piece of scrap paper, which happened to be the back of his PhD thesis in the house that Sue had typed up. He was a man of music, with the words of the early pioneers and early Zionists on his lips and in his ears. To David's students and colleagues, he was a giant whose shoulders they stood on. And as his colleague Mike Dorsher remarked, the way we and dozens more have been standing on Dave's shoulders for decades, no wonder he's weary now. Deb's Judy remarked that David was just a guy you could have a beer with. There's no subject off the table. You could talk about whatever you wanted. He was always responsive, with allegedly a great sense of humor. For almost 64 years, David was Sue's beloved. They had their own interests and their joint interests. They raised 3 daughters as a team. It wasn't always easy to be married to him or be raised by him, but there was a sincere tenderness in his heart. One needed to be perfect to leave a powerful legacy. David was a nerd, but he was Sue's nerd. He was her travel companion, and they enjoyed their time together as much as the places they went together. On birthdays and anniversaries, David would make sure to give jewelry because that's what a man of his generation would do. He would have flowers for every anniversary, and he would never forget. To Deb, Lisa, and Adina, he was the father that taught them they could be whoever and whatever they wanted. He taught them they would be accepted, they could achieve any dream they sought. David was the father that would bring Lisa to every Northwestern football game with hot cocoa to drink and to watch them lose together. He was the father that brought Adina to the Miami Hurricane football game to learn about Northwestern finally winning a game. Just as David's father taught him during his year at Columbia, don't let your classes get in the way of your education, David and Sue taught their girls the same. David gave his daughters what Lisa described as one of the greatest gifts you could give a child. At times, he would treat them like equals, even if that meant dominating a game of Clue and demonstrating how using inferences from metadata could help you win, even if that meant beating an 8-year-old child at a simple game. David was a dedicated Jew. He was the son and the father of rabbis and a secular Rav, a teacher in his own right. David would build a sukkah every year, and he had no issue schlepping the wooden doors to build it from Madison to Evanston to Miami to Boston to Eau Claire. But the movers, they might have had a different feeling. David was a high holiday chazan, he had a deep love for Jewish music, and his nusach, his tunes, seeped into the hearts and souls of Deb's congregants throughout the years, and his kiddush became the family kiddush, the same tune they used this last Friday to bring in Shabbat for the last time together. David was a committed brother to his siblings. Years ago, David and Sue were about to go to Israel to visit Judy when she told them that she had a tour to go on up north for a few days, and David didn't have to come if he didn't want to. When Judy shared it was up north to Metula and Tel Hai, places named for the bunks from camp they attended as kids, David's ears perked up and he had to go. Judy got the opportunity to play tour guide to her big brother and sister-in-law. And not only did Judy love showing David around and seeing him as the adoring uncle to her children, but Judy shared of the memories, falling asleep to listening to David play flute, an instrument she still loves to this day because of him. From the moment George was born and ruined David's 7.5 birthday, they've had a beautiful brotherly relationship and playful rivalry. From George worrying David forgot to call him in case the call got intercepted after George's Nittany Lions beat David's Hurricanes in the 1987 Fiesta Bowl, or when George would show off his master's diploma and ask to see David's, or for David's to have his legal name Aaron David Gordon. That wasn't David. So according to George, you went up David there. There are so many lessons David imparted to his students, his family, and loved ones over the years. To David's niece Rivka, he taught what age really meant. When David turned 70, Rivka could not believe it. Her young uncle was so old, but he was so young. His zeal and bright and funny disposition forced her to readjust and re-understood what age meant. David taught that family does not necessarily mean being related by blood or closely related by blood. David's cousin Jake was more brother than cousin. From time together at Herzl Camp and their summers in the Twin Cities, they grew a bond that was unbreakable, even if that meant Jake having to root for Wisconsin after David got him student access for all games. And Dick Cordozo and his family were more cousins than family friends. Just last week, Dick came from Nashville to say goodbye, and he told David he'll be back in a few months and that he'll want to see him. David told them, don't hold your breath. And Dick shot back, "Why don't you ever do what you're told?" And without missing a beat, David said, "Why would I start now?" In Parshat Shlach, we learn of the sin of the spies, of failing to do as they're told, of giving a false report. Rabbi Shai held, no relation to me, even though if David wouldn't believe that, says, in a verse in Parshat Shlach, the Torah admonishes us not to follow after our hearts and our eyes. But a verse in Kohelet, Ecclesiastes, encourages us to follow our heart and our eyes. In Shlach, with the commandment of tzitzit, we read, ensure you do not go after, tatur your heart, levavchem, and your eyes, enechem, after which you go following. But in Kohelet, we read, let your heart lead you to enjoyment in the days of your youth. Follow the desires of your heart and the sight of your eyes. David Gordon lived this paradox to a T. David Gordon let his heart lead to enjoyment. He lived a life with a youthful spirit and joy. He was fun and silly and lighthearted and kind, and he never let classes get in the way of education. And at the same time, David lived within boundaries that were holy. He upheld the mitzvah of achnasat orchim, of welcoming the guest. He was a beloved husband and father. He was a teacher dedicated to his craft, but in doing so, he was always unquestionably himself. Even at the end, he did things his own way. He taught his daughters, his family, and his friends too as well. David Gordon followed the desires of his heart and the sight in his eyes and created a beautiful life with meaning and love, and he touched so many in doing so. May David's memory only and always be for a blessing. I want to invite Deb up to share some words and then lead us in the El Malay Racham.
Dad would be gratified in his quiet way to know that he touched so many lives. Because Rabbi Held talked to family, we didn't talk a whole lot about Dad's professional life. I'll give you the footnote reference. What Rabbi Held just said, Zichrono Livracha, may his memory be a blessing, means more than the memories that we have. It means find your piece of his legacy and live it out in your life. Make his memory a blessing through you to people he never got to meet. Our family thanks this community, the professionals, Dad's colleagues, and mine, the friends and the family who have eased our burden by doing tasks large and small. Toda Rabah. Thank you. We have a lunch back at River Pines after Dad's burial. It's for family, for anyone who came from out of town. Some of you who are in town are family. I know that you'll sort yourselves out. Shiva will be tonight, Tuesday, and Thursday, 7 p.m. at the house. Anyone who's up for leading it besides me, I'm happy to have you lead it. Otherwise, I will lead it. Shiva with Mom, however, will be tomorrow night at River Pines. 6:30, service at 7. Please be there. Please help us make a minyan all 3 nights. Info is in the Leader Telegram. Got to mention the newspaper first. And on the Smith Funeral Home website. The things I know, how the living go on living, and how the dead go on living with them. So that in a forest, even a dead tree casts a shadow, and the leaves fall one by one, and the branches break in the wind, and the bark peels off slowly, and the trunk cracks, and the rain seeps in through the cracks, and the trunk falls to the ground, and the moss covers it. And in the spring, the rabbits find it, and build their nest inside, and have their young, and their young will live safely inside the dead tree, so that nothing is wasted in nature or in love. Please rise as you are able. God, full of compassion, dwelling in the heights, grant perfect rest beneath the wings of the Shekhinah, among the heights of the holy and pure, shining like the sky. To the soul of my father and my teacher, Aharon David ben Harav Matityahu Herzl, the Devorah Fruma, who has gone to his eternity. May his rest be in the Garden of Eden. Master of compassion, shelter him in the shelter of your wings forever, and may his soul be bound up in the bond of life. The eternal is his inheritance. May he rest in peace, and let us say Amen. El Malei Rachamim, Shochen Bamromim, Amtzei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei Hashchina, B'malot Kedoshim U'Tehorim, Zohar Arakia Mazirin, Et Nishmat Aharon David ben Harav Matityahu Herzl u'Devorah Fruma, Shehalach le'olamo, B'Gan Eden te'menuchato. Ana ba'al rachamim, hastireu b'seta knafecha le'olamim, u'teror b'teror v'chayim, et nishmato. V'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo v'nomad Amen.
You may be seated. Momentarily, we will leave from here to the burial site as we escort David to his final resting place. I'll invite everybody to rise momentarily as we escort David out. Before doing so, I just want to read one more verse from Psalms. As a father has compassion for his children, God has compassion for those who show reverence. God knows how we are fashioned, God remembers we are dust. The days of mortals are like grass, we flourish as the flowers of the field. And one passes over them and they are no more. No one can recognize where they grew. But God's compassion is everlasting. God's kindness to children's children, to all the reverent ones, endures age after age unchanging. I'll invite those who are able to rise, I'll invite the family to escort.
Exactly.